At Subway, start your day the flavorful way by adding new guacamole to your favorite breakfast sandwich. Perfectly made with a hint of jalapeno, our guacamole turns up the flavor to your breakfast. Try it today on a hot and toasty egg, white, and cheese. Subway, eat fresh.
The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects. The BS Report. The BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Welcome to the BS Report. Wednesday morning here, Southern California, fresh from the streets of Germany. Bill Barnwell, how are you?
I refuse to go to the country in Germany. I only stay on the streets.
So I want to talk a little football. I've been doing homework. I'm going to be the most prepared I've been for a season since 1965.
I'm excited.
I want to talk first some division odds.
Mm-hmm.
The division odds are out. The Super Bowl odds are out. The over-unders are out. The playoff odds are out. I thought we could go through the divisions. And before we do that, let's talk about the stroke of luck you had on Monday. You planned on writing you're unleashing like a 75-part NFL preview. We're in week 3 right now. Yes. You laid out the master plan for us a few weeks ago, and week 3 was quarterbacks at the crossroads. The Monday column, you told us like 3 or 4 weeks ago, was going to be Andy Dalton. You post the column. It's up for 40 minutes, and Andy Dalton gets a massive, ridiculous extension, and I hope this is the year of Barnwell.
It was really incredible. I mean, the timing, as far as that goes, I can't top that the rest of the year. I mean, it's all downhill from here.
It would be the equivalent of you writing about an entire thank you for coaching about some coach who was going to screw up his team's season at some point, and then like 2 minutes later, he makes the dumbest decision of his life.
It really was incredible. And I mean, the Dalton deal isn't as bad on second viewing. None of those deals ever are. It's basically a 3 year. I think it's 3 years, $35 million.
I know.
But it's still a lot of money for Andy Dalton.
Yeah, we got to stop this whole thing where the first figure that gets thrown out is the figure that everybody thinks the guy is actually worth. Because this happened with Michael Vick. Who was the other quarterback this happened with? Romo?
Donovan McNabb it happened with a couple of years ago.
It's always 1/4 what the actual reported money is. I think. Can I go against the grain here a little bit?
Please.
What is it? What is the guaranteed? 3 years for what?
I think it's $35 million in that range. If the Bengals are going to give him 3 years, it's around $35 million. And then after that, it's kind of a year-to-year contract.
It's tough because Baltimore, not to compare him to Flacco, but Baltimore was a little bit in this spot with Flacco a while ago, and Flacco ended up having the best possible contract here he could have ever had, and ends up getting $120 million, as you pointed out in your trade value, 2-part piece. That contract has now murdered the Ravens.
Yes.
So, this happens in basketball sometimes too, where you take care of the guy the year before he could really be worth something. The Warriors, I think, are a good example of they took care of Stephen Curry. He had some ankle issues. It wasn't totally a franchise guy yet. They rolled the dice, 4 years, $44 million. That's now one of the 5 best contracts in the league.
Of course.
So Dalton is only in year 4, which is amazing. It feels like he's been in the league for 15 years.
It really does.
He's made the playoffs 3 straight years. He has sucked in the playoffs for 3 straight years. And
he's been awful.
As you and Chris Brown so eloquently pointed out in your piece, it really comes down to whether he gets pressured or not. And I guess you could say that about a lot of quarterbacks, but for him especially, what is it about him?
I mean, it just seems like he doesn't have that experience of how to handle a pro pass rush. Like in college, he didn't really play in a scheme where he was sort of going under center every single play, and he wasn't, kind of dealing with the pass rush whizzing by him, and he didn't really know where to step and where to make the right move. And so it's not about you don't have to be Michael Vick when it comes to handling pressure. You don't have to run around 3 guys and make some incredible pass. It's just about taking the right step to the right spot in the pocket to clear up some space, and let the guys run past you, and then make a throw. And Andy Dalton, he doesn't really have that sort of innate feel for doing that. I don't know if that's a skill or it's something you can teach, or it's something that's innate. I tend to think it's something that's innate, but I mean, it's just he doesn't have the ability to do that yet. And if he hasn't shown it after 3 years, do we really think it's going to show up in year 4?
Well, I'm going to harken back to the mid-'80s. And Tony Eason, one of my least favorite Boston athletes of all time, and somebody that just the mere mention of his name sends Pat fans shuddering. That was somebody who was very similar to Dalton, and he was awesome if he had protection. He was great if, he had a lot of weapons on those mid-'80s Pats teams. Those Pats teams were pretty good. Made the Super Bowl, and then the following year was a really good
Super Bowl that year.
Huh?
What happened in the Super Bowl? I don't remember what happened in the Super Bowl.
They got destroyed by one of the great defenses in the history of the league.
Oh, and then the next year, Perry ran for a touchdown on them too, I believe.
But Walter Payton didn't, which would have exploded the internet if the internet existed in 1986. But the next year, the Pats were good too. And then once again, Denver beat him up, and he was never quite the same. And it makes me think, like, I don't know how close Dalton is in the Eason DNA phylum, but I was heading into this season with them, just thinking big picture. All right, who are teams that are going to be better? Who are teams that are going to be worse? And it does feel like this is a fork in the road for him, because I do feel like if a couple things go wrong in September and October for the Bengals, he has the biggest bullseye, the biggest non-Romo bullseye in the league will be pointed at Andy Dalton. He will get blamed. The fans will turn on him. He'll get booted home. It'll be a lot like what happened with Matt Schaub last year. And we see this with quarterbacks where when this invisible tornado turns against them, it sweeps them away and they're gone. Do you think that could happen to him this season?
Well, like it's the court of public record where there's so much against you that at some point you can't do anything to overturn it. Texans fans last year were probably happy with, not TJ Yates, but it was Case Keenum. Case Keenum was the first quarterback. Yeah. Even though Case Keenum was terrible and probably worse than Matt Schaub, just because he wasn't Matt Schaub, he was still better. He was still more appealing. I mean, it would be tough. I think that given that they've been so successful with Dalton his first 3 years, he might have a little bit more of a leash than that. It might be maybe next year this time happens. Like I think if let's say they go 9-7 or 10-6 again and they lose in the playoffs for a fourth consecutive season without winning a game, I think that's when the fans turn on Dalton. I don't think it's going to be after 3 or 4 games, but it definitely feels like that could be a possibility within the first couple of years of this contract. Because I mean, pretty much, I think I wrote about Tannehill today, and Ryan Tannehill's someone where we don't know a lot about him after 2 years. We pretty much seems like we know what Andy Dalton's going to be after 3 seasons. So I'm wondering if that's going to be any different this year, given that they've now lost. They lost Gruden, their offensive coordinator. They replaced him with Hugh Jackson, the former Raiders offensive coordinator. They're changing their scheme. They're going to be more run heavy. And I mean, they're still really dependent upon AJ Green. So as long as AJ Green's there, I feel like there's kind of a get out of jail free card for Dalton, given that Green is so freaking good.
Well, they also might have the Giovanni Bernard second year fantasy breakout season.
Are you on that bandwagon?
He's a pretty good bet. I don't know if I'm on the bandwagon yet. I haven't finished all my research yet, but he's certainly a candidate. There's no question. And he was one of those guys you watched last year and you always wondered what he'd be like with more touches. And he was scary if you were betting against the Bengals or picking against them or rooting against them. Anytime they gave him the ball, it was frightening. But I think before week 6 last year, I wrote about, that invisible line turning against Matt Schaub. And the QB position, so much of it is about body language and charisma and things that stats can't measure. Of course. It's an intangibles position as much as it's a skills position and a stats position and all that stuff. And that's my question with Dalton this season is you pass that line and all of a sudden you're carrying yourself like Schaub was. And when you see it, the guy's done. Like you just know he might not be done for his career, but he's usually done with that team. And I should have queued up the Bengals schedule here, but there is a scenario where they could be. I'm going to look at it as I'm talking. There is a scenario where they start out 2-4 or 1-3.
Here's the schedule. It's not. Okay. It's kind of ugly to start. It's at Baltimore, home against Atlanta, who I think is going to be a resurgent Falcons team this year.
We agree.
We agree. Mace does not agree with me, so I'm happy you're on my side here. You're the tiebreaker. Yeah, you're the tiebreaker in the Mason Barnwell marriage. Yeah. Titans, bye week, but then they're at New England, home against Carolina, at Indy, home against Baltimore.
Okay, so they have 6 games with the bye week in there. Let's say they lose to Baltimore. They split Atlanta, Tennessee. One of those is an ugly game where they're favored by, like the Tennessee game, they're favored by 8.5. Dalton throws 3 picks. All of a sudden they're 1-2 or 2-3. Bye week. He takes heat. This guy sucks. I can't believe we're paying him. Now we're in Sunday, week 5 at New England, Sunday night NBC. Big bullseye in Andy Dalton now. They're 1-2. Is this guy good? Is this guy? Now he sucks in that game. Revis gets 2 pick sixes. Now we're going home for Carolina. Fans booing the whole time. They lose that one. They're 1-4. Now they're going to Indianapolis for week 7. They're 1-4. Season on the line. Like, this is a scenario that I could see in my head.
For sure. No, the schedule definitely helps. Not knowing the schedule until we just said that, it definitely is more plausible given that they play what? They play 3 playoff teams in a row after their bye week, and then they play 2 teams that could make the playoffs this year in Baltimore, Atlanta, before the bye week even starts. So it definitely is plausible.
Well, the good thing is Vegas has something called odds, and you can apparently wager on these. Yeah, you can apparently wager on these, and you put money and you try to guess what happens, and it's called gambling. All these division odds, usually there's the big favorite or like the semi-big favorite and maybe 1 or 2 other teams that are kind of close from a money standpoint, and then 1 or 2 long shots.
Right.
The AFC North is the most fascinating of the 8 divisions.
Really?
First of all, there's no favorite. Everybody, you get money if you win. So the Bengals are plus 190, which means for the people listening, you bet 100, you win 190 if they win the division. The Steelers are plus 215, very close to the Bengals. The Ravens are plus 280. So now you have 3 teams within a 3-1 range, and then the Browns are plus 650. So Vegas is basically saying, we don't know either. We're not sure. And then you look at the over-under for wins. Bengals are 9. Steelers are 8.5. Ravens are 8.5. Browns are 6.5. So I think Vegas has already earmarked that as the we don't know division.
Yeah, or there's just some team that is sucky is going to climb out of this pile of crap division.
Explain this to me. I'm getting all these odds from Sportsbook.
Okay.
The Bengals are have better division odds, but they're 33-1 to win the Super Bowl. The Steelers have the second best division odds, but they're 20-1 to win the Super Bowl. What is it about the Steelers?
I have absolutely no idea.
It's bizarre, right?
It really is strange.
Do you see any scenario where the Steelers win the Super Bowl? Because I don't.
Oh, man, how would that even work? Like, Troy Polamalu was just on some incredible PED. And, I can't even fathom it. The Steelers are a team where they're kind of like the poor man's Cowboys at this point in terms of how they've mismanaged their cap and how they're just pushing it back year after year, just hoping to kind of get that one year where everyone gets healthy and everyone plays well and they win 10 or 11 games. But I'll tell you this much. If they had the NFL wants to expand to 7 playoff teams per conference.
Yep. I kind of secretly support it, but don't tell anyone.
I hate it. I hate it so much.
Okay.
The playoffs are so perfect right now, Bill.
Well, here's what I like. I think I've actually even written about this a few years ago. You have the bye weeks for the 1 seeds in each conference. Then the 1 seed actually is worth something. And then that first week we get 4 games. No, we get 6 games.
We would get 2 versus
12.
7.
Yeah,
2
we
versus
get
7,
6
3 versus
games.
6 versus 5. That's too many.
That's great. That would be the greatest weekend of my life. Why are you against 6 football games?
I have to write about 6 football games.
That'd be great. You'd be fine. Just drink a lot of coffee.
But I was saying the Steelers. So the Steelers, if the playoffs had been 7 teams the past couple of years, the Steelers would have made the playoffs both the past couple seasons.
Oh.
So you kind of think differently about them, right? Like you're like, they're kind of on the downswing. But if they were the 7th seed in the playoffs, they're a totally different team in your perspective in some ways.
And it's a contract year for Roethlisberger, correct?
I believe he is either next year or this year. But basically, it's coming up to the point where they're going to have to decide either we're going to give him an extension or we're going to move on.
In NFL terms, it's a contract year.
Exactly.
It's either they're all in or they're going to have to make other arrangements.
Right.
They lost Emmanuel Sanders. Did they replace him? I don't remember.
It's not like
really.
Losing Emmanuel Sanders is an enormous loss one way or another.
They got Brown.
They added Mike Mitchell, who was a safety from Carolina last year, who was a big hitter, kind of came out of nowhere after being not a journeyman, but a special teams player for the Raiders, who is a big hitter. And they added Ryan Shazier, who was just one of those inside linebackers where you think, okay, if the Steelers draft this guy, he's going to be a Pro Bowler for the next 10 seasons after he kind of gets his way. It's the same thing with the Steelers every year, though. It's what is that offensive line going to do? They're not going to stay healthy, and if they don't stay healthy, that offense just isn't going to work.
Who are the other teams that were ravaged by the cap and are basically just put together by Scotch tape at this point, other than the Steelers and the Cowboys?
Oh, the Panthers. Poor Carolina Panthers.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so brutal because they were so much fun last year because there was this old school throwback team, and you have Ron Rivera just doesn't care on the sidelines, realizes he almost got fired by being conservative, and just their starting receivers are Jericho Cotchery, Jason Avant, Tyquan Underwood, and Kelvin Benjamin, their first round pick. It is terrifying.
And they
how little they have on offense.
And they had below average receivers last year. Yes, but now they're somehow worse.
Yes, they were starting Steve Smith and Brandon LaFell and got significantly worse. It's incredible. Poor
it's weird because the stats are so good. This is one of the things that fascinated me as I was doing homework. The stats are so good now, and the regression and the two different ways it can go where a team was either they underachieved for a variety of reasons that we can prove or they overachieved. And now it's like Vegas is now incorporating this stuff in the over-unders.
Oh, for sure.
You know, like Houston, I'm looking at them. Hold on. Houston, their over-under for wins is 7.5. They won 2 games last year. But Vegas is just assuming they're going to be better.
Of course, and they should be. I mean, I would take over 7.5 on them in a heartbeat, depending on what the odds were. But, I mean, certainly I think they're going to be an 8-8 or better team. And Carolina is what? Is Carolina 8.5?
Yeah, hold on.
I think Carolina's 8.5.
It's 7.5 on Sportsbook.
7.5, and they were what 12-4 last year, or 13-3. They were a double-digit win team comfortably. You beat the Patriots, they beat the Niners, and they beat the Saints. They were a good team last year.
Another good one is the Chiefs. The Chiefs are 8.5. They were what were they 13-3 last year, or 12-4?
I think.
They were 11-5. Sorry,
but they were a very good team, and they were 8-0 or 9-0 at some point during the season. But, I mean, we saw what happened. They played better competition. They played a tougher schedule during the second half, and they weren't the same team. And they don't get to play the AFC South this year, which is a huge disappointment if you're a Chiefs fan.
Where do you stand on this, the Pythagorean wins versus the real wins when the ratio becomes, like, for instance, the Texans were 2-14.
Yeah.
But the Pythagorean wins formula for them said they should have had 4.2 wins. And there's a feeling... And the stat people were using this, and now it feels like Vegas has kind of jumped on this too, where if the Pythagorean wins are so much bigger than the real wins, by probably like 1.8 or higher, then that means the team, for whatever reason, totally underachieved and is a better bet to be much better next year.
You know what I wish? I wish we could go back to 2003 and have 2003 Bill Simmons have this conversation with 2014 Bill Simmons.
Yeah, he would have been upset.
He would have been very disappointed in 2014.
He'd been like, what are you doing with these stupid stats?
But I'm so proud of you, Bill.
Thank you.
You're growing. No, it definitely matters. But, I mean, there's more to it than that, right? Like, it's not just that the Texans were 2-14 and had a point differential of a 4-12 team. I think they were leading 4 playoff teams in the second half last season. Clearly, at some point, you got to figure they either quit on their coach or they had an idea that they weren't really going to be playing for the same coach next year. I mean, during the second half of that season, the effort kind of disappeared towards the end of the season. And numbers can't capture that, and they got blown out in a couple of games that made their Pythagorean differential look worse or whatever, but there's more to it than just strictly the numbers. You have to combine the numbers with what you see on tape and what you see from common sense, from watching games and from understanding how human beings work. I mean, you're not going to get the same effort from a Texans team that's playing a good Colts team in December when you're down 8 games in the division that you're going to get from the team when they're competing for a division title. It's just how it works.
We do have one stat. It doesn't capture it, but it gives you a good indication of whether the team went in the tank. It's called weighted DVOA.
That is a stat.
Shout out Aaron Schatz.
Yeah, shout out the Football Outsiders Almanac that just came out.
So Houston was 30th DVOA for the year. I like DVOA more than the other stats because it adds all these variables that I think are just a better indicator. Their weighted DVOA was 31st. So that basically says, all right, we shit the bed the last 6 games. But then you look at a team like, let me find a good one. Let's say Tampa.
Sure.
So Tampa is, and Tampa is just looking at the stats, is a candidate to be better this year than last year. They were 4-12 last year, 5.3 Pythagorean wins, so they underachieved there.
I'm afraid to have this conversation.
Their weighted DVOA was 20th, so they didn't really quit down the stretch. Their schedule, on on offense, they went against the number 2 out of 32 defenses in the league from a schedule standpoint. And then defensively, they went against the 3rd best collection of offenses in the league.
Right. So
and they were in a tough division. They had Carolina, they had New Orleans. The Falcons weren't good, but, and then they had a lot of weird stuff going on with Greg Schiano.
Right. Of course.
So I'm not saying I believe in them or not. I have not decided yet, but there are indicators that they might be better than you think.
They are. What did Kevin Pelton tell me? Kevin Pelton, ESPN Insider, told me like the Timberwolves are his Timberwolves are my Buccaneers, like the team that you get fooled by every single season.
Yeah.
Where you're like, they're going to be good this year. They have all these reasons why they're going to be good, and they just suck year after year after year.
That's
the Rams
kind of where I'm leaning. Who you said? The Rams? The Rams are another one.
Mm-hmm. I'm writing about Sam Bradford for Friday, and I'm kind of feeling the same thing about the Rams. But they're kind of like, they're indicators, but at the same time, we could look back this time next year and say, we really believed in the Buccaneers when they had Josh McCown as their starting quarterback, and they lost Darrelle Revis and replaced him with Alteron Werner, who's not the same caliber of player. I could see myself not falling for the Buccaneers and then immediately regretting it, like week 2. That's without Josh Freeman.
I'm a month away from deciding. But yeah, they also had the bizarre Josh Freeman saga last year. I think one thing with losing Revis, it wasn't the same Revis last year. I think the Revis that everybody is raving about in the Pats training camp is the real Revis. I don't think, unfortunately for Tampa, they never got the real Revis last year because that's a 2-year injury. But, you remember my stupid theories better than I do at this point because I think I have sports columnist Alzheimer's. But what was my theory about when a crappy coach is replaced by a competent coach? I forget what I called it. I forget who I named it after. It was some terrible coach.
It might be Andy Reid. It might be Romeo Crennel, I think. It
was the Romeo Crennel theory. And last year, Andy Reid was the candidate because Andy Reid was replaced with Romeo Crennel, and it was like wins over. I think it was wins over Raheem Morris. That's who it was. It was Warm. Wins over Raheem Morris. So this year, Lovie Smith, say what you want about Lovie Smith, competent coach. Is somebody that got to the playoffs a bunch of times, always has a good defense. His teams always have a personality. He's not a loser in any way. They go from Greg Schiano and the Freeman disaster to Lovie Smith. They have Carolina in their division that I think is going to regress. They have Atlanta, who, even though we think they're going to be better this year, we don't know. And then I think the Saints are the everybody believes in us team this year. People are just throwing them into the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I don't say that with the Saints myself. I think they're going to be a good team, but I don't think they're like obviously the best team in football by any means.
It's great for everybody else in the NFC that people have just anointed the Saints.
Yes. So what are Tampa's division odds? Is that what you're at least heading in that direction slowly but surely?
Couple interesting Tampa things. I need to look at it more. I haven't decided yet. I just think their schedule was offensive last year. I mean, it was the most brutal schedule anybody had. Plus 750 for the division.
Ooh.
Their over-under is 7 for wins. They could get to 8-8.
They could. You have to back Josh McCown and Mike Glennon, but they could get to 8-8.
Another team that I think regresses this year, the Cardinals of Arizona.
Really?
Yeah.
Very, very controversial team. I think because they're in such a tough division that they're kind of stuck either way. I'm with you. I feel like they got the most out of that talent last year that they would have gotten.
Yes, it was a 10-6 team, 9.5 Pythagorean. But you mentioned this in your trade value, and it got my brain kind of percolating. Carson Palmer, because the Rams defense is going to be freaking crazy. The Aaron Donald pick was insane. They're just adding him to one of the best front sevens. So Carson Palmer now has to go against the Niners, Rams, and Seahawks 6 times.
It's so terrifying.
That's 40. Is that 40? It's about 40% of the season.
Yeah.
It's brutal. He's not going to survive that. He's going to have like quarterback PTSD or PSTD, whatever that is. He's not going to survive 6 games against that division. He might throw 40 interceptions this year. I'm going under for the Arizona Cardinals.
Right. But I mean, do you think that Drew Stanton is maybe a better quarterback than Carson Palmer? Because I feel like that could be possible too.
Great. Now I have Drew Stanton going against the NFC West. Either way, I like
it. Fair point.
And
they lost Darrell Washington, who's one of their best defensive players for the entire season, I think, because of a suspension. That's going to hurt. I don't know if Honey Badger is going to be 100% at the beginning of the season. That's going to be a problem. Mays loves the Arizona Cardinals, so
that's it. That makes me even happier. I've seen that guy reach in his pocket for gambling bets before. Can you answer me this question?
I'll try.
Is this a Matthew Stafford breakout year? I mean, he's had big stat years, but I'm saying, like, is this an everything falls into place for Matthew Stafford year potentially?
I don't know. I feel like I heard about Stafford, and I kind of feel like he's somewhere. He's like halfway between Tony Romo and Andy Dalton.
Oh.
Like, I feel like he's kind of stagnant and he's kind of going to be that same guy again. But I also don't know what it would take to have him get better. Like, I feel like he's going to be that same guy who's going to throw sidearm passes and going to make really lazy passes when he needs to be protecting the football in the fourth quarter. And I feel like I don't really know how Jim Caldwell is going to make him a better quarterback, given what happened with Joe Flacco last year.
Yeah, Jim Caldwell does not qualify for warm.
No,
for wins over Raheem Morris.
You might need to Woj and have wins over Jim Caldwell in the future.
Woj. They added Reggie Bush, and who is the good receiver they added? I forget.
They added Golden Tate from Seattle.
Golden Tate and Eric Ebron, basically a
North
lottery
Carolina
pick.
Tight end.
Yeah, a lottery pick by NFL standards.
Right,
who
sure.
they think's going to help right away.
Yeah.
And it just feels, and then you get rid of the whole Jim Schwartz. I thought Jim Schwartz was terrible. I don't know if Jim Caldwell is going to be worse, but he definitely, I don't know if he'll be better, but he definitely won't be worse than Jim Schwartz. I thought Jim Schwartz that whole team took his personality on.
I don't know. I mean, Jim Caldwell had, I would say, one of the worst timeouts in the history of football the last time he was coaching a playoff game against the Jets.
True. Very true. But at least he made the playoffs, unlike Jim Schwartz. Did Jim Schwartz make the playoffs?
He made it once. They got blown out by the Saints, but I mean, they were what? They were 8-5 last year.
Right.
I remember because I had Detroit over 8.5, and I had Detroit winning the division title, and they were like 8-5 with Aaron Rodgers hurt, and they had to win like one game over their final 3 games to make the playoffs, and they didn't do it. So
another team that fits the sleeper categories, the Redskins, 3-13 last year, 4.8 Pythagorean. Rick Griffin was, year after the ACL injury, wasn't the same. They added some weapons. Deshaun Jackson,
sure,
he's on there. Everybody else is coming back. Has a little bit of a slippery feel. Do you believe in them at all?
I do, and I think it's not only that they have sort of a healthier quarterback. They have a new coach. I think Jay Gruden could be good for Robert Griffin. I think it's going to depend upon how flexible he is. They have a 28-year-old offensive coordinator, which is terrifying. It makes me feel very old and very ashamed of how little I've accomplished in football. Sean McVay is there. But, I mean, certainly you would think, given how that team kind of fell apart in the second half last season, you would think that they would have something more to offer this year. And the NFC East, honestly, there's no great team in the NFC East.
It's awful.
It's just like it's 4 teams where you could see them finishing anywhere from 10-6 to 6-10, and it wouldn't surprise you.
The over-unders are 9 for the Eagles, 8 for the Giants, 7.5 for the Redskins, 7.5 for Dallas. I mean, that is just as mediocre middle of the road as you can get for a division. The Eagles, I guess you can make a little case because their weighted DVOA, which basically tells you how they did the second half of the season, they were 3rd. They really came on big time, and I like Nick Foles. I'm not going to apologize.
You really like Nick Foles?
I do. I kind of like him.
That's the dude you want to back. Is Nick Foles, who's playing in the greatest offensive scheme in football?
I didn't say I want to back him. I just think he's okay in that scheme. If he can stay in the field, I think he's going to put up stats. Do you think?
I think there is a higher chance that people realize that Mark Sanchez is going to be the quarterback of the Eagles at some point this season.
I still have not given up on the Sanchez. Have not. Saw that guy come through in playoff games. That means a lot in the Bill Simmons house when you come through in playoff games. And also when you beat my team in a playoff game, you win my respect a little bit.
Did he beat Peyton Manning and Tom Brady in playoff games?
He did.
That's something.
And maybe he only threw 7. Maybe he only threw 7 passes apiece of those games or whatever it was. But I just think that was an awful situation. He had no weapons at all, and he had a fan base that once the butt fumble happened, it was over, and he needed a change of scenery. It's conceivable to me that he comes back.
Yeah, and I mean, certainly playing in that offensive scheme will definitely limit some of his weaknesses. I mean, your job in that scheme is really just to make a simple read and get the ball out quickly and be decisive. And I think he can do that. I think his problem was really more kind of having to read multiple progressions and sort of cycling through plays and definitely running a more complicated scheme. Where he was really best was in those playoff games, at the end of games when he was really kind of making simple reads and maybe checking down or making a simple throw or really just making a quick throw. He was actually a pretty good quarterback. So I could see him being good in that scheme, certainly.
Well, I just think Foles is the QB. I mean, unless something happens to him, he's going to be the guy. And I also think he's going to go for about $15 too high in my fantasy league. I'm excited for that.
Guaranteed.
Won't be me. I like quarterbacks who stay on the field. All right. We've gone this long. I'm really excited about the Pats.
Oh, you don't say. Why are you so excited about the Pats? Is it this,
I'm excited. We're going to be able to cover receivers this year, so that's going to be fun.
That's a start.
It's going to be fun to be able to stop receivers and actually intercept passes and stuff. I'm excited.
Can you imagine how covered those Patriots receivers are going to be in practice, though?
Well, this is actually a good thing because Brady's had a lot of trouble against Revis and Browner, and then we lose Browner for the first 4 games, but that's good for Brady. I think it's good for him to be going against really crazy good quarterbacks in practice, and Revis, by all accounts, has been out of his mind. Like, people just can't believe how good he is. Yeah, he's going to be great, and people forget how good Brandon Browner is.
That's the one I'm kind of questionable about, and here's why. Pete Carroll is the greatest defensive backs coach in the NFL. And he's brought in Brandon Browner, who was a CFL player, and turned him into a Pro Bowl caliber player. Richard Sherman was a 5th-round pick. He became a superstar. When they lost Brandon Browner, they didn't skip a beat. Walter Thurman was very good, and he went to the Giants, didn't get a lot of money. And Byron Maxwell, their 3rd-string cornerback, was phenomenal when he came in and played across from Sherman. So to me, I wonder how successful those guys are going to be outside of the Seattle scheme and with without Pete Carroll around to coach them up.
I've heard this. I've heard that point made. I get it.
Don't want to believe it.
No, I just think Browner's good, and maybe they had other guys who were good, and they had a really good defense. And
he doesn't have to be. He doesn't have to be great. He just has to be pretty good across from Revis.
Pretty good is the biggest upgrade we've had in years as our second quarterback. Do you realize what we've trotted out as our second quarterback? It's been a catastrophe.
It's been Kyle Arrington, I believe.
Yeah, and it's been even worse than that. Dominique Easley is 40-1 to win the Defensive Rookie of the Year, and I don't think I'm not going to put $50 on that just for pride's sake. 40-1.
Interior lineman.
He fell because he had 2 torn ACLs.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying he doesn't play a position that lends itself to getting a lot of big numbers, but at the same time, Sheldon Richardson, the Jets defensive tackle, I believe won Defensive Player of the Year last year when he wasn't a known player in terms of picking up a lot of production and getting a lot of sacks. So it's possible. I mean, 40-1 is pretty far, given that Jadeveon Clowney is right there. But I mean,
actually, the best odds are Clowney at 3-1 because him and Watt together. I want to meet one person who doesn't think that they're going to be ridiculous together. By the way, we have a bone to pick. We did it on email, but let's do it again in the podcast.
Yeah,
you said that Clowney and JJ Watt.
Right.
If it was the early 1990s or late 1980s, would have had their own Costaco's poster, and it would have been called Texas Toast.
I think that's a very solid title. I think given for the 5 seconds I spent thinking about it.
It was right, but then I emailed you and I was like, no. The poster would have been called Houston, We Have a Problem, and they would have been dressed like astronauts, or they would have been sacking an astronaut, or they were sacking the space shuttle. There would have been some sort of astronaut NASA theme. 100%. Lock it down. I almost want to get whoever runs the Costico brothers on the phone, and they can decide between Texas Toast and Houston, We Have a Problem.
I feel like we should have that kind of clout at this point.
Yeah.
I feel like, why don't we have a Costico brother? Maybe there's an illegitimate Costico brother on staff, maybe.
Bob Costico?
Yeah, or Cooper Costico, the third Costico brother.
They read Grantland because Jalen and I I forget how it happened, but I talked about the X-Man poster, how much I loved it, and they mysteriously mailed it to our office. And now it's in the Grantland studio, so they must be listening. So Texas Toast or Houston, We Have a Problem. Your idea was For the Texas Toast poster, how would they be dressed? In their uniforms?
I think they'd just be sacking a guy in a Toast costume.
Oh, they'd be sacking actual toast? Like a big piece of toast? That's interesting. Or maybe like a barbecue chef who has toast and...
Yeah, I
still think...
There's a variety of ways you could go with both ideas. I'm going to say that much.
Would you rather have them sacking an astronaut or the space shuttle? In Houston, we have a problem.
I feel like it's much better to have them dressed as astronauts.
Okay.
I feel like that's way more entertaining. They can be sacking the space shuttle. They could be sacking the moon. They could be sacking a planet.
Oh, the moon is interesting. I didn't think of the moon. Yeah. Maybe they're standing on the moon, sacking the space shuttle. I like that. Offensive Rookie of the Year, Sammy Watkins is the leader at 4-1.
You got to figure that makes sense, right?
Yeah, but I certainly don't think that's nearly the sure thing that Clowney is. And especially like we're not – what do we really know about E.J. Manuel? People are excited about him. It's like he was really up and down last year. We don't know if that guy's getting
right. He was injured for most of the year. He wasn't really
hurt.
Anything out of the ordinary. I mean, there are definitely other options out there. I think Teddy Bridgewater at 15-2 is someone I'm pretty fond of, given that I'm very high on Teddy Bridgewater.
Me too. You and I are driving the Teddy. When Bridgewater is leading the Vikings to an improbable playoff spot, we'll be like at least in the first 2 rows of the bandwagon.
I appreciate that.
I love Bridgewater.
I would say maybe Odell Beckham on the Giants at 25-1, because he could have one of those years where he has 2 punt return touchdowns and 8 receiving touchdowns and a couple of 90-yard plays where he's going to be a highlight reel player, even if he's not necessarily kind of like the best actual offensive player in the league.
Yeah.
Who else? I mean, yeah, I would say those guys are kind of up there. But I think
Cooks is 7-1 on the Saints because they don't really have the go-to number one receiver 100% other than Jimmy Graham. People think that he could catch like 100 balls.
Right. He could be kind of like, he's not going to be Darren Sproles, but he could be kind of versatile enough to get used in a lot of short passes and a lot of plays where he's breaking 3 or 4 tackles to get 15 yards.
I have an announcement to make in the BS report. Anyone who wants to bet on Blake Bortles for 30-1 for Offensive Rookie of the Year, I will take those bets. I will book them myself. Mail the money to Bill Simmons at Grantland in LA, and if he wins, I'll pay you.
I like that.
First coach fired.
First coach fired is a good one.
It's a lively list this year. I really like it.
Are there odds?
Oh, yes.
What are the odds?
The cousin I may have already discussed them. Jason Garrett is your leader in the clubhouse at plus 400.
I feel like wouldn't Jason Garrett have been fired by now if they were going to be that aggressive about firing him?
This really feels like the year for him, though.
I thought it was last year. I really thought if they didn't make the playoffs last year, they were going to fire him. And not only did they not fire him, but it wasn't even like a question. It was like, oh, we got stuck starting Cal Orton week 17, so it's okay. Move back on. I
think when Jones fires him, it's going to be like the end of The Godfather where like 5 people go down. So it'll be like Garrett gets fired, Romo gets waived, Des Bryant gets traded. It'll be like 7 things happen on the same Friday. Jones will just clean house. Doug Marrone is second at plus 550.
I feel like Doug Marrone has nothing to work with. I guess Sammy Watkins now. I would say Dennis Allen is pretty high up there now.
Well, I was so shocked by that. Dennis Allen was third at plus 600. I thought he was actually going to be the leader because that team's done nothing for 2 years, and they're not going to do anything this year either.
Right, and then Reggie McKenzie, it might be better for him to fire Dennis Allen to kind of create some space around himself and say, oh, well, we got to get the head coaching situation fixed before we can worry about my future.
Exactly.
I think they're certainly up there. If Atlanta went really bad very quickly, Mike Smith could be someone, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Interesting, because he wasn't even one of the top 8 guys on the list. I was surprised by that. Gus Bradley and Joe Philbin were 10-1. Coughlin was 12-1. Ron Rivera was 15-1. Yeah, Coughlin's not getting fired. Ron Rivera 15-1. That's not happening either.
That would be so sad.
But I agree with you. I think Mike Smith is a candidate because they stunk last year, but you can build in a bunch of excuses for it. Sure. If they stink again this year, they're going to start looking at him a little bit.
Right. They're a very sort of conservative franchise. I don't think they would wait till the end of the season before they fired Mike Smith. But if they start 1-4 again, and their team is built to win right now, you can certainly see it happening. Certainly to the point where he should be one of the top 8 people, if he's not necessarily, the top candidate. I think Dennis Allen's the top candidate, though.
Here's another one of my favorite bets. I haven't really researched all of these yet, but I really like this one. Matthew Stafford over 40 TDs. What do you think the odds are for that?
Plus what did he have last year? He throws so many passes. Plus 450?
16-1.
16-1?
That Matthew Stafford will throw 41 touchdowns.
Yeah, that's why I'm not a bookmaker.
I guess you're just betting. I guess the fear would be he got hurt, because he does get hurt a lot.
Yeah, I mean, he had 41 in 2011, so it's not like it hasn't happened. 20 in 2012. Yeah, 16-1 is something. 29 last year. I think Vegas thinks they're going to run the ball more, and they probably should, given how bad they've been when they've had Stafford throwing 700 passes. Yeah. But I mean, who's their running back? They have Reggie Bush, who's okay. They have
probably get hurt.
Right, he'll probably get hurt.
Jacques
they have Jacques Bell, who was, I think, a pretty decent goal line runner. So I don't think, I feel like they're not the kind of team where they don't have an obvious goal line back where they're going to be throwing the ball every time they get within the 5-yard line. So 16-1 is definitely crazy, but I think it's still not going to happen.
I forgot to mention this when we were talking about the Pats.
Mm-hmm.
We got lucky with the schedule.
How so?
This seems to happen every once in a while. And it's one of those, it doesn't look lucky at first glance, but if you actually study it, we got lucky. 6 games against the AFC East. That's great.
That's luck every year.
That's luck every year. Oakland at home.
Oof.
All right. So now I'm 6-1. We'll go 5-1 against the AFC East. We'll blow one of the road games to somebody stupid. So I'm already 6-1.
Okay.
I'm playing at Minnesota and at Indy. 2 domes for Brady. Brady loves the domes.
Yeah,
loves them.
Teddy Bridgewater's going to rip apart Brandon Browner in week 2. It's going to be incredible.
2 domes for Brady. We win those.
Mm-hmm.
We're at San Diego in December. That's usually a cold weather game. Not this year. San Diego.
I might be at that game. I'm very excited about traveling to San Diego in December.
Buffalo at home in week 17. And then this is my favorite. Playing Denver at home. 3rd straight home game we play them. Home for like 3.5 weeks. And then Manning shows up.
That's a 4 p.m. game?
Some good schedule breaks there.
How is that a 4 p.m. game? Patriots-Broncos. How is that not a night game one way or another?
Because probably they use the Pats and the Broncos a bunch of other times.
They use it every single year for or every single Brady Manning game for the past 15 years has been a Sunday night or Monday night game.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say this much, though. I know how you feel about Peyton Manning in cold weather.
Yeah.
Having an afternoon game makes it a little more likely it'll be warmer in New England for Mr. Manning to work with.
Yeah,
there.
I'm not penciling that down as a win. I'm just saying that's nice to catch the Broncos when you've been home. That 3rd home game at home is always a nice one. Yeah, let's see the stats on that. One thing I was surprised by, Denver was minus 300 to win their division.
Mm-hmm.
The Chargers were plus 650 to win that division. Chargers over-under is 8.5. Chargers to make the playoffs, if you bet yes on that, plus 300.
Mm-hmm.
Why doesn't Vegas like the Chargers that much?
I think it's just the fact that they kind of fluked into the playoffs last year. They were sort of a team where, I was just saying how the Steelers, you think about them differently because they just missed the playoffs as opposed to kind of just making the playoffs as the final seed. The Chargers were the team where really it was that sort of last 2 or 3 weeks of the season, everything kind of coalesced for them. They suddenly were a better football team, and they sort of backdoor their way into the playoffs. Really, they shouldn't even have made the playoffs given that, what was it, the end of their Chiefs game, they had a field goal that was blocked that shouldn't have been blocked. There should have been a penalty or something like that.
I think I won money in that.
That's the way that works, apparently. So, I mean, I think it's a combination of that. It is a tough schedule. They're playing, I mean, if you don't think they're going to win the division, they're playing the NFC West and the AFC East. So the AFC East isn't great, but the NFC West is pretty tough. So, I mean,
if you think that I don't agree with you on the AFC West. I think the Chiefs are going to suck. That's right. I said it. The Chiefs are going to suck.
You have no faith in Andy Reid.
SUCK, suck.
Well, that pretty much guarantees. I think the Chiefs will be like an 8-8 team this year. I don't think they're going to be a bad team. I don't think they're going to be as good as they were a year ago.
But the Raiders aren't going to be better.
They could. I mean, they can't be much worse than they were last year. They have Matt Schaub.
Yeah, exactly. So with the Chargers, they had the number 2 offense last year.
Yes.
They had they were second, according to DVA, second in pass, 12 in rush.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty good.
No, I mean,
they go top 5 in one, top 12 in the other is hard to do. Their defense was an atrocity.
Oh, it was awful.
They were They were the 32nd defense last year, but they also spent the offseason trying to improve it and getting better at defense. So they won't be worse.
I think the defense is a little better. The offense is a little worse. Philip
a little
Rivers
worse for what reason?
The offense?
Yeah.
The offensive line isn't very good. I mean, Philip Rivers
wasn't very good last year, right?
Yeah, but I think it's going to be even worse. I don't have faith in King Dunlap as a starting left tackle. I don't think the running game will be as good. I think Philip Rivers, it was the best Philip Rivers possibly could have played last season. They were phenomenal last year, I think, at turning third downs into first downs, which is like if you're a good offense, you're going to do that a lot. But even given how good they were on first and second down, they were so good at it at third down, they're probably not going to be as good at that this year. So I think, again, better defense, certainly, given how bad they were last year. The pass rush should be there in a way that it wasn't a year ago. Getting Dwight Freeney back will help for that. But if they're maybe like the 6th best offense in the league and the 25th best defense in the league, I don't know if they're going to be a 10-win team, especially given that they have to play the NFC West and the AFC West, which I think is better than you're saying it is.
I'm not officially saying anything yet. I need to do more research. This is all about where I'm leaning. And I like that Chargers team. And by the way, you mentioned Phil Rivers. You didn't call him the rejuvenated Phil Rivers, which is his new name now.
I'm saving that for Eli
rejuvenated Phil Rivers.
I'm saving that for Eli this year.
All right, so we went through that, and then the AFC South, Colts minus 180. That looks a little suspect to me. Just because I just feel like people are looking at the division and be like, oh yeah, Colts will win that. And we know football doesn't work that way. And the Colts, no first round pick this year, kind of went, like they have holes. They really lucked out with the division they had last year. That was like the all-time winning the lottery of a division years.
Of course.
And I don't know. I don't know how good the Colts are. Like, they really didn't do anything well other than Andrew Luck is really good at football.
That's the thing. They are a one-person team. Andrew Luck is phenomenal at football and drags everything they do so far up that they can make mistakes elsewhere on the roster. They can be a pretty bad defense. They can trade for Trent Richardson and have him be a total mess. And Andrew Luck can carry all that to 10 wins against a terrible division. Now, Andrew Luck, we're doing a whole week on Andrew Luck at Grantland in a couple of weeks.
I can't believe you spoiled that.
Listen, I tease. I'm not saying what we're going to say about Andrew Luck, but I'm just saying we're going to do a whole Andrew Luck week.
Yeah.
And
we're combining Andrew Luck with rom-com week. It's just it's a whole week about Andrew Luck rom-coms.
I'm just excited for you to do your Andrew Luck impersonation for a whole week.
I'm excited to have my own week. It's going to be great.
It's like Sly Stallone with no accent whatsoever.
Sly Stallone crosses Andre the Giant. Yeah, so I get all the cases for the Colts, but so much relies on Andrew Luck, and all he has to do is get hurt for 4 games, and it turns into the 2013 Packers season.
Yeah, and that's
my only point.
Andrew Luck gets hit more than anybody else in football, and he's
by far
big, and he's enormous.
It's not even close. Yeah, so
which is kind of scary.
Houston.
I'm on the Houston bandwagon.
They do some stuff well. I like teams that you can point to a couple things they do really well.
Mm-hmm. They're going to rush the passer well, and they're going to probably be able to run the football well.
It's not going to happen? There's not going to be an offense in 2014 that says, oh, good, we get to play Houston this week.
No.
Every quarterback's going to be like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
Hey, you want to go out this week? I can't. I'm playing Houston. I have Clowney and Watt coming after me for 3 hours. I'm not doing anything. I'm going to have a salad.
Yeah, let's make sure we're having max protect on every single play against J.J. Watt and Jadeveon Clowney. I don't think that's even going to help. I feel like both those guys can be double teams on a pretty regular basis. I mean, and Bill O'Brien, for everything that I hear about Bill O'Brien is that he's a pretty good coach. I have been burned before by ex-Belichick tree guys, but given that he got Matt McGloin to be a professional quarterback, I think he can probably do something with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Now, I don't think Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to be a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback by any means, but all he has to do is be as good as Mark Sanchez was on those Jets teams. If he can do that, I think the defense can be good enough for them to make the playoffs.
He's definitely a warm candidate. He's like one of the top 3 guys that just taking over for Kubiak, who would have been fired if he hadn't been hospitalized, I think. I think if Bill O'Brien is good, and you throw in Clowney, and the fans are pumped. No more Matt Schaub. And not a great division. There's a lot of reasons why this could be a team that.
No, I mean, their schedule's not tough. They have one of the easiest schedules in football. It starts Washington, at Oakland, at the Giants, home against Buffalo, at the Cowboys.
What did you, last thing, and then we're going to go. What did you think of, Chase Stewart did this thing where he looked up I thought this was a really smart idea. He looked up all the lines for Vegas for the 2014 season. And then tried to figure out, basically, like it was only the first 16 weeks.
Yeah, they don't do week 17 odds at the beginning of the year because you don't know who's going to be trying, who's not going to be trying in week 17.
So he tried to figure out from these spreads, this is who Vegas thinks are the best 32 teams in the league.
Yes.
I thought it was a really cool idea. I don't know if it works, but so he had Seattle as the number 1 team, Broncos 2, 49ers 3, Packers 4, Pats 5, Saints 6, surprisingly Panthers 7, Bears 8, sense. Eagles 9, Bengals 10, Colts 11, Lions 12. Do you think there's anything to be gleaned from this idea?
I think there's something to it. I mean, you have to build in some, I think, measures for home field advantage, I think, is a really important thing that comes into the lines that isn't maybe accounted for there to some extent.
Yeah.
But I mean, it definitely, you learn a lot from what Vegas thinks about not only those different odds and then kind of combining them into a bigger number picture, but also then what their over-unders are. I mean, I wouldn't be as confident about the Texans if it weren't for the fact that Vegas is saying they're going to be 5.5 wins better on average than they were last year. I think that says a lot about, it sort of reinforces what I might see from looking at the numbers. So to me, definitely, that stuff isn't defining. Vegas still gets stuff wrong, and definitely those lines may look stupid by the time week 16 rolls around, but it definitely is a good starting point for sure.
Well, and the one thing they do is they do incorporate a little bit who the public teams are. Like the Packers are 4th in that list, and they do that because people like to bet on the Packers.
Yeah, and the over-unders especially as well. You do like the Bears and the Giants always get more, teams like that who are popular sort of on a bigger basis get more action on their overs than you might expect.
One thing I was thinking was they're overrating Carolina.
Within the spreads, I could see that.
They're 7th.
Yeah.
And I wonder, if they're overrating them, then there's real value the first 5 weeks. I wonder if part of a 2014 strategy would just be going against Carolina until the line shift on them.
Short the Panthers the first 5 weeks. Who do they
Short
play? They are at Tampa, home against Detroit, home against Pittsburgh, at Baltimore, home against Chicago, and then this is the tough part of the schedule. It's week 5 to week 8, week 9. No, it's not week 10. Wow, this is awful. They are home against Chicago, at Cincinnati after Andy Dalton's been benched. So they'll get the comeback of whoever Cincinnati's backup quarterback is replacing Andy Dalton. At Green Bay, home against Seattle, home against New Orleans, at Philly. That is an ugly stretch of football. Oof.
Well, how'd I do? Don't I sound pretty prepared for August 6th?
I'm very impressed.
Thank you. I'm going to have a big year. I'm 30 games over 500 this year. But I am excited I can't go down like I did last year. I mean, everybody got killed last year. Even the Football Outsiders, who usually did well against the point spreads, got annihilated. It was just a weird, screwed up, wonky first 6 weeks, and it messed everyone up. I think we'll look back at it the same way we look at weird weather years and things like that. I don't think it's a typical thing.
So you're saying last year was the El Nino of football seasons?
Yeah, it was a little bit El Nino-y. Yeah, I really felt that way. We should plug, you're doing your NFL preview all the way through up until the season. You probably might crank out 100,000 words here.
Yeah, and you know what? I described a football preview as a little bit El Nino-y as well. I'm going to incorporate that into my vocabulary a little more frequently now.
El Barnwell. And also we should mention your excellent podcast with Robert Mays, which I think now is expanding to Monday, Wednesday, Friday during the season.
That is accurate. 3 days a week during the football season. But now, before the season, 2 podcasts a week covering one division a day. So I think we're starting today with the AFC North, the optimal, obvious choice for where to begin the NFL podcast preview.
And what's the actual title for that podcast?
The actual title is the Grantland NFL Podcast. It's not the best title, but we're still working on it.
Man, I feel like that needs a better title.
We talked about this.
Might have to work on that.
We can't top the low post. It's the best title.
It is. It's the John Walsh rule when you can work your own name into anything. That's why the BS report, I'm so happy. If you can work in your initial or your own name into your podcast thing. So maybe you call it like
the thing is, we have Barnwell and Mays. That's BM. You can't do that. You got to steer away from that.
Yeah, Barn Maze. Like, let me.
The Barn Maze.
Barn Maze. The Barn Maze report. All right, Bill Barnwell, great work so far in the preview. Thanks for coming on. Talk to you later in the preseason.
Thanks, buddy.
All right, that's it for the BS report. We are going to call Jacko right now, but we're going to split that up into a second podcast. So look for that too on the Grantland network, and check out the new Jalen and Jacoby went up today, and a whole bunch of other podcasts. Subscribe to those for God's sakes. Check them out. Check out our all the Grantland podcasts. Thanks for listening. Talk to you soon.
So I get to sign off. Whoa!
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Podcenter at ESPNradio.com.
Peace out.
Geico presents Strange Savings Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.